you a home grower looking for a little bit of help? Are you ready to learn as much as you can about your favorite hobby? The Homegrown Helpers brings you informative interviews from experienced growers that have taken the next steps in their journey and decided to help you grow top quality cannabis all in your home. Now welcome in our host, Rob Smith, along with this week's Homegrown Helper. And welcome to the show, all you home growers out there. Are you ready for this week's grow tips and tricks from another homegrown helper? All right, me too. First, of course, we do have some housekeeping notes to ask you to help us out with. We only grow because of you. If you can subscribe and share, rate and review the podcast on whatever podcasting app you're listening to, we would certainly appreciate your help. Also, I do have to mention that we have two podcasts, growcastpodcast.com. You can find all the information right there. You can download all the episodes on iTunes, Libsyn, any podcast app you listen to. That's where I started my podcasting venture with as a guest for my product, Atlas Plant Trainer, which you've heard mentioned on the show before. But Jordan and Wolfman and all the guests that we've gotten, including Ed Rosenthal, Danny Danko, Patrick the Soil King, and so many more, are really rocking the grow content over there. We also are coming out with a third podcast, hopefully by the end of summer, called Homegrown Journals. And our guest today is actually completing a journal for our show. It might not happen until fall time at this point because Benjamin is really busy with his outdoor hemp farm and cannabis grow, but we understand how that goes. Also, if you are in the market for your very own homegrown helper, please reach out to me, Rob, at thehomegrownhelpers.com, and we will link you up with the right consultant for your job, whether that is just getting started and you need help setting up the grow, or troubleshooting a particular problem like some plants aren't responding in the way that you expect them to, or completely tearing down and starting from scratch. Let us know. We have consultants all over the country and starting to get them all over at least North America at this point in time. And we want to help you find the consultant that matches up with your grow style and your personality, which is ultimately one of the most important things when you're looking to learn from somebody for an extended period of time. Also, we have to thank today's GrowPass sponsors, where you can find more information at mygrowpass.com. Today's partners are Danny Danko and his book, Cannabis, A Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana. You can buy that book by going to growcastpodcast.com/Danko. And our Bloom members can get their book signed for free by the man, Danny Danko himself. Danny's also given up one book to give away each quarter. Our other partner on today's show is Dr. Zymes. You can find them at drzymes.com. They are the amazing Dr. Zymes. Listeners get 10% off by using GrowCast10 at checkout, and members get a whopping 25% off their entire order. We also have a giveaway for each one of our winners of 5 in our 5K giveaway. More on that later. But if you want to know more information, head on over to mygrowpass.com. That's our membership program that Jordan and I launched between our 2, soon to be 3 podcasts. And check it out. We'd appreciate it if you do. So let's bring in today's homegrown helper, Benjamin Morgan-Dillon of Acadia Farms. Ben was actually our first live interview here at the Homegrown Helpers. So the audio is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to hearing. Hopefully it's not too echoey and we didn't do a horrible job at recording this. But I think it's really great content. Ben provides some immense value in his tips and tricks. So hopefully you enjoy it, and let's get on with the show. How are you today, Ben?
I'm very well. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. Why don't we start you off with an easy question? Why don't you tell us your company name, where you're from, and how long you've been growing cannabis?
So my company is Acadia Farms, and let's see, I've been growing since I was 16. So it is coming up on 14 years now. It has been quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Almost half your life.
Yeah, almost half my life now. Coming up on it. And it's been an amazing journey.
And where's your business out of?
We're currently located in Rehoboth, Massachusetts.
And how far do you travel for work? Like if somebody was calling you up and needed some assistance in the grow room.
So I've traveled anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours, but I usually try to stay pretty local. That way I'm able to pack my day pretty full. I like to be as busy as possible. I hate driving because it's wasted time.
Right on, right on. But then you get to listen to great podcasts like the Homegrown Helpers, right?
This is true. This is true. Though honestly, if I'm not on the phone or having a business meeting or consulting for somebody, I've usually got at least one earphone in with a podcast running.
Right on, right on. You got to keep that knowledge coming in the brain.
Oh, it's a sponge.
So how long have you been consulting, and what made you take that leap into helping other people grow their own?
So I probably started consulting after I'd been cultivating for probably around 6 or 7 years. The first, 3 to 4 years was a real hard learning curve. There was no help really available at that point in time, especially not help available to, let's say, a 16 to 19-year-old kid that was, in school full time and playing sports and, for all other reasons at that point, very upstanding young man who didn't grow cannabis. That sort of continued through as I went through college, and I did very, very well. I ended up as a nursing student and was the first chair of my program. So again, nobody could know at all the fact that I cultivated. So when I did start deciding that I would do some consulting work, it was basically just friends and family that wanted to learn what I had learned and wanted to be able to replicate what I had produced and begin their own journey, so to speak. And so I helped a few family friends that were on the elderly side that wanted to do some cultivation, but really needed specifically designed grow rooms for their needs, for their handicapped accessibility and stuff like that. And it really gave me a phenomenal sense of reward and made me feel really, really good about myself and about being able to help them provide for themselves. So that went really, really well, and it just sort of continued from there.
Great. So I'm sure you're like a lot of our guests on this show, and by the sounds of it, definitely with your background of helping out the handicapped. What's been, one of the biggest medical problems that you've been able to help a patient out with? Like even if it's just setting up a room for that handicapped person that's wheeling around the wheelchair.
So probably one of my personal favorites was one of my very, very first clients for consultation. She had severe scoliosis and was so hunchbacked that she could not stand vertically at all. So I had to design special grow benches that rolled and tilted for her so that she was able to access all of her plants in the grow bed and not just the ones that were in the very, very front. So it was almost like a tiltable rail, like Lazy Susan almost.
Cool.
And that worked phenomenally for her. And just to see the joy on her face when she was able to, tend to all of them. She called them her little children, and she'd give them all little names. And it was absolutely so satisfying.
Oh man, I could never name my plants because you got to chop them down in 2 months. Like it's like culling your kids every quarter.
Now they get numbered.
So, Ben, why don't you tell us about your current grow setup? Like, how big is your room? What type of lights? How many plants do you have in there?
So right now it's still what I would consider my winter cycle. So in the winter cycle, I run an indoor operation versus summer cycle as an outdoor operation. But we're in the prep stages for the outdoor operation of the winter cycle. So usually I run 2 5x5 tents, which are both flowering, then a 2x4 nursery, which I can also do a clone operation in. Though my whole style of cultivation is really, my methodology has changed pretty dramatically over the past 2 years as I've become more and more involved in organic cultivation and specifically regenerative cultivation. So now I focus much more on providing a proper ecosystem versus providing the proper nutrients from bottles. And that has allowed me to minimize the space requirements a little bit more, which has allowed me to expand the actual flower production a bit more. So we use the 2 5x5 tents in alternating cycles. So that way I'm harvesting roughly every month. So it's a cyclic feed so that I got a nice consistent variety of different cultivars for myself. And it allows me to do a really thorough job of doing some phenotype hunting. So I can run 4 plants per tent and have the rest of them in veg kicking over with another 4, so I stay in my plant count numbers. But it allows me to do a nice selection throughout the winters. That way when it comes to summertime, I can do my prep work, have my girls ready. So that way when, June 1st comes around, we can plant them outside and let them do their thing.
Right on. So that's the perpetual harvest that I prefer people to set up with. Keeping a perpetual harvest in one tent or one room and just having multiple plants in there is near impossible to fully clean that space. And you're constantly worried about the bugs and the mold that might be, just kicking around in the room because you're not able to fully clean it. So I like that setup where you're able to, once you harvest, I'm sure you fully clean that tent down and then throw fresh plants in there.
To some extent, yes, but I'm not growing in individual bags. I grow in beds. So I don't clean my room as thoroughly as I used to. I used to do a full bleach and scrub down.
Yep.
Now I use isopropyl alcohol and hydrogen peroxide mixed, and it takes care of, for the most part, mold and mildew spores, which is the only things that I'm actually concerned about.
Yep.
Because I utilize beneficial insects, so any negative insects are just food for my friends.
Sure. Right on. So let's get into some growing tips here. If you're looking to set up a new grower, an experienced grower is coming to you and just need some guidance on plant health, what's the one thing that you're having them pay attention to, or the most impactful thing that they need to be paying attention to when it comes to plant health?
Is it a beginning grower or an advanced?
Whatever works for you. I'd say most of our listeners are somewhere in between that brand new grower and that experienced grower. So let's call them intermediates.
One of the major things that I would say, just like right off the cusp, if you're looking into a room and you see nutrient deficiencies in the leaves, and the leaves are not what we call praying, where they're really nicely curled up towards the lights, not curled in on the leaf, just curled up towards the light. And that means they've got a really great rate of transpiration. They're breathing very, very well. And that's usually an indication of a very, very happy, healthy plant. If it's got a nice green, rich color, not overly dark though, because that means it's most likely overfed if they're too deep. But a nice, rich, solid green with no chlorosis, no fading around the edges, no deficiencies that are noticeable, and no damage to the leaves. Then, those are the first things I immediately look for is what's the color of the leaves? And what is the attitude of the leaf in the sense of, does it have visible damage to it? Does it have visible deficiency in it? And is it visibly happy and rigid, stiff up towards that light? Okay,
so if the plants aren't praying, and one thing I'm going to get better at is show notes. So listeners, we're going to be posting pictures of some nutrient deficiencies, some hardcore praying plants. So let's talk about that praying aspect. If your plants aren't praying, what do you want a grower to look at to correct those issues? What's the first couple of things that you're
First two things that I look at would be environment. And then underneath environment, I would say temperature, range of temperature fluctuation, room humidity, range of room humidity fluctuation. And then if there's nothing readily available there that tells you what you're looking at, then you take the next step and you go to the secondary environment. That's the actual canopy or the root zone. And again, that would come down to a little bit your style of cultivation. Canopy is going to be pretty synonymous across the board, whether you're growing synthetic, organic, living soil, it doesn't really matter. Healthy canopy is a healthy canopy. But as far as the root zone and the soil layer goes, if you're doing a living soil style cultivation like I do, I would immediately be looking for any signs of anaerobic areas. Excess water, over moisturization can cause immediate cellular death and degradation within the soil if it's oversaturated, because there is no oxygenation and the microbes will start dying off and anaerobic bacteria will start to kick off. So if you smell ammonia, that's a pretty prevalent sign that you've got some bad things going on in your soil. And then secondarily, I'll check for if there's any excessive insects in the runoff. If you've got a ton of larvae coming out of your runoff, then that can be an indicator right there if you might have an infestation in your roots, maybe like a root aphid or Fungusgnats even can do some serious damage, more along the lines of in nursery level growth, but they can still be very prevalent in flowering rooms and vegetation rooms. So that's the sort of things where you want to keep an eye out.
And I battled fungus gnats for so long, and it almost got to the point where I almost just gave up. I learned to live with them. And then when I actually defeated the fungus gnats and didn't see any in my roams, my plants were noticeably more healthier. And
Oh yeah.
and people will tell you that fungus gnats don't impact your plant all that much. And maybe they don't if you only have them for a week or two and you're able to get rid of them. But when they're around and they're part of your grow system, they do impact your plants because they're just going to eat at that root base, and your plant is not going to feed off of those plants. So take care of them. Don't let them linger around. Keep a clean grow room. Clean up those dead leaves that's on top of the soil. Let that soil
I'm
dry
totally
out.
opposite now.
Yes,
I
you are.
defoliate and
You
I
are.
put all of that plant matter right back in to feed the carbon.
So Ben
But
is
a healthy ecosystem. I have no bugs.
referring to. We both attended the Regenerative Organic Cannabis Conference in Portland, Maine, and Ben has drank that Kool-Aid and has fully transitioned, I think, which if I were growing, I would be transitioning as well. It's hard to ignore that science. But I'm pretty sure Ben will get further into that with our homegrown journal. But it's really amazing stuff. And outside of the whole cannabis scene, like we need to be doing this for
Yeah, just
the
in
world.
general.
Yeah, like the world.
Conventional agriculture is not going to be able to sustain.
No, we have 8 billion people in this world, and if
Yeah.
we keep abusing it, we are going to kill it.
Well, we've effectively gotten to that point now in the vast majority of America's major production areas for food. We've actually gotten to a tipping point now where farmers have seen over the past couple of years that even though they're consistently adding increased levels of NPK nutrients every year, they're actually seeing decreasing amounts of yields. And they don't understand how you can be increasing fertilizer amendment and decreasing in your yields. And the basis is that we have done so much damage to the microbiology in the soil for the past 50 to 75 years that the microbiology has gotten depleted to the extent now that it is no longer even able to buffer what it used to be able to buffer. And now the plants aren't even able to eat the nutrition which is being provided to them because it's raw.
So you kind of set this next question up perfectly, unintentionally. What would be the perfect thing or the one thing that a grower needs to pay attention to improve the yield that they achieve off a plant?
That goes back to your first question. Happy plant. Ecosystem. If I was to say the one thing that they need to pay attention is the balance of the ecosystem. You do not have to have any one specific piece of your grow perfectly dialed in if you have the vast majority of your grow well dialed. And so if you have, slight room for fluctuations in temperature, slight room fluctuations in humidity, slight fluctuations in nutrient availability and in watering consistency, you will still get a substantially better yield than if you have 3 of those things more out of whack, but one of them dialed in perfect.
Man, I really thought you were going to go straight to the soil with that answer.
No, I tried to give you something a little less Kool-Aid-y. No, it's actually funny because Fungusgnats is what got me to convert.
Yeah.
I was growing in some beautiful organic soil, but I was using bottled nutrients. I had the flowering tent going. I had the nursery going, same thing, Fungusgnats in both. And then I listened to Tad Hussey Kiss Organics, Cannabis Cultivation and Science podcast, and I listened to Shango Low Shaping Fire. And I was like, all right, maybe there's a little something to it. So I'd been an organic grower outdoors for a long time doing vegetables and produce. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, why am I treating it like some completely different world? Because it's on the other side of a wall in my house.
Right.
So
because it's inside.
Yeah. Yep. So I took a 3x3 flood table and a 3x3 grow bed, just a crappy cloth liner. And I built a PVC frame and, sewed it all together and threw a couple bags of worm castings and some really good organic soil in there, and then a little bit of amendment of kelp meal, BioLive, which is like a lobster chitin and shrimp chitin and crab chitin, and then some mycorrhizal fungi and a little bit of humic acid. And I threw 4 plants in there, 1 pure sativa, 2 hybrids, and a pure indica, just to sort of see the spectrum of how they would play across. And gave it nothing but water and fish shit from our friends at Fishhead Farms and a couple compost teas. And then that was it. I was blown away. The fungus gnats or any insects never took hold in that tent. And I mean, same room, opened the tents at the same time for waterings, passive intake of air. They were both getting the same thing. So there was no way the fungus gnats were not getting in there. There was just no sustainable environment for them. even though technically speaking, the soil in that bed had a much, much larger surface area. It had degrading biomass and carbon matter and plants and leaves on the top of it. Perfect environment for a fungus gnat to eat fungus. But they weren't able to persist in there because the environment had no weak points. It had no allowance for that vector to come in.
Yeah. I was going to bring up that point, like the healthy plants, or like as soon as your plant is unhealthy, that's when you start to notice those signs.
But the thing is, I never even would have known that because my plants that I was growing with the nutrients looked amazing. I was getting phenomenal growth, good yields. The terps were on point. Everybody looked at that tent and they're like, this is amazing, great flower. And I'm like,
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Doesn't look sick, doesn't look like it's not healthy. It looks vibrant and full of life. It was doing awesome. But then you go to the next tent over and you're like, wait, what's with these? And you'd look at them and they are just even more vibrant. My rate of growth was just ludicrous to the point where I was completely caught off guard and I was getting like almost a foot of growth a week.
Wow.
And I had to top and then just top and then just top just because I didn't have space in there. The canopy didn't have the allowance.
Man, if only Atlas Plant Trainer was in your life at that point.
Instead I ended up building this, I kind of built my own Atlas Plant Trainer, I guess you could say, but it wasn't as nice. Didn't have the clips and the versatility. It was a PVC frame that stepped from the 3x3 bed to a 4x4 and inside the 5x5 tent. And then it had a 2-scale vegetative and flowering canopy. And I had 4 levels of scrog in it to try to keep these things. I just had to keep flattening them out. But the yield was phenomenal. The terpene profile was the best I'd ever cultivated. It handled very well across the board with all 3 different cultivars. And that's what really sort of kicked me down the road. And I was like, all right, I got to learn more about this. And then sort of almost like the end of my cycle was going to the regenerative conference. And that was sort of like the last nail in the coffin where I was like, nope, this is it. And ever since I've been on that path, I can't say I have regretted it once. It has been so much more enjoyable to cultivate because now I feel like instead of having the hubris of saying, I know what the plant needs and I'm going to make the plant better and push it and drive it. It's like, no, I now have the honor to be a guardian and to be a guide on this path for this plant. And I get to learn from it and its style. And all of a sudden, my flower is so much better.
Awesome.
So we're going to take a quick break for today's mygrowpass.com membership partners. We have Dr. Zymes Eliminator, the amazing Dr. Zymes. You can get them at drzymes.com. That is drzymes.com. You can get 10% off your entire order by using GrowCast10 at checkout. Or members of mygrowpass.com receive access to the 25% off coupon code. All you need to do is become a member, any level, either the veg or the bloom, at mygrowpass.com, and you gain access to that. They also do a quarterly giveaway for us as part of our 5K giveaway. Each one of our 5 winners is going to receive a prize pack of both their multi-purpose cleaner and their eliminator, a bottle of spray and concentrate, different varying amounts there. But the amazing Dr. Zymes Eliminator is a revolutionary green solution that kills and eliminates soft-bodied insects, molds, and mildews on your indoor or outdoor gardens. Eliminator is a proprietary formula, handcrafted to ensure quality control. Professional growers use it all year to ensure pest-free, mildew-free plants. Many growers have realized an increase in yields by not having to combat pests and mildew with toxic or oil-based products, and that when used as a preventative, they did not see any pests or mildew even up to the day of harvest. So thank you, Dr. Zymes, the amazing Dr. Zymes, for coming through and helping out us and our members. Our other membership partner is the man, Danny Danko himself, a personal friend of mine. He has a new book out called Cannabis, A Beginner's Guide to Growing Marijuana. You can get that book by going to growcastpodcast.com/Danko, and that goes right to Amazon and Danny's link so we can get some credit for that. Our Bloom members get their books signed for free by Danny. You don't have to track him down at any one of the shows that he's at doing this. He'll do it for free just for all of our Bloom members, and he's also given away 1 signed copy of his book each quarter. Danny is the senior cultivation editor at High Times Magazine, industry legend and all-around amazing guy, and he wanted to give back to our community a little bit, so he joined us in offering up his books to be signed for Bloom level members. This is a great book for beginners and the experienced grower because even experienced growers know that you must keep learning in order to stay on top of your game. Grab a book for yourself on Amazon by going to growcastpodcast.com/Danko. Thank you to the amazing Dr. Zymes and Danny Danko for helping us out launching mygrowpass.com. And if you'd like to become a member, head on over to mygrowpass.com and check it out.
So, kind of want to get untraditional here.
Go for it.
Do you have any unique grow tips or tricks that you'd like to share with our audience?
So I can't say that it's unique because I am many things, but I suppose a true innovator is not yet one of them, but I am a student. And so I can tell you many things that I've learned that are phenomenal.
Sure.
So one thing that I really enjoy utilizing is aloe vera. That is probably one of my biggest new secret weapons, is utilizing aloe for its many, many versatile facets. Everything from a cloning gel. That's all I use now for cloning, is just a stick of aloe vera from a plant, and I stick the clone right in it. The microlacerations form in the actual dermis of, or not dermis, the cellular matrix of the clone from the internal, what's it called? Basically structure of the aloe vera plant. It actually has little tiny slits that it'll form on the stem, and then the aloe vera seeps in and goes right into soil, and I've got a phenomenal cloning rate with that. And then everything to a soil amendment, right in on top of the soil with your soil drenches, or you can take it and pulverize it in like a blender and mix it into a foliar feed, and it's got silic acid and just a whole lot of micros. It's really, really good stuff. The plants absolutely go nuts for it and just respond really well. It's good for correcting micro deficiencies as well. If you're just starting to see a little bit of fluctuation in a plant that's not quite right and you don't know exactly what it needs, a little bit of Epsom salt, a little bit of aloe vera, nice little foliar, and she's happy.
I hadn't heard that about the aloe and correcting the deficiencies. What do you attribute that to? I mean, I know Epsom salt is
Mineralization.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. It just helps things get.
I think that the
to
aloe
the plant
acts as
that
a
are already in it.
conduit
Yep.
to the Epsom, as well as having the silic acid in it.
Yep. Okay.
And silicone.
So that silic is what's going to help the nutrients penetrate that stomata.
Yeah, and also helps it to,
stick
it
to it.
increases like cellular wall matrices and increases the strength of the plant.
So, what type of person, what characteristics of a person makes the best grower, in your opinion? The most successful grower?
Patience and empathy. To be patient enough to allow the plant to grow, because every grower knows that stuff. You're just sitting there, you're like, come on, get a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger, a little bit faster.
Let it finish, let it cure.
Exactly. And then secondarily, that empathy, that passion, because if you're not empathetic to the plant, if you don't care about whether it's happy or not, well, it's not going to produce well for you. It's just like any living thing. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be loved and cared for. It needs to have its needs met. And that's one of the reasons why I don't personally enjoy some of the mass level cultivations where it's almost entirely automated and the plant is literally just a serial number that gets put in and it gets pumped up and it gets run through a conveyor belt and then it gets harvested one day and it just, there's no love in that plant. And it's almost, you can taste it when you have truly high quality organic flower, there's something more to the experience, and you can pick it out when you're actually having really nice flower put in front of you, and you can really start to tell what's synthetically cultivated and what's organically cultivated. And personally, I just actually came back from a trip to California where I went to 25 different dispensaries from San Francisco up to Humboldt County, and I toured 3 to 4 different facilities a day, from nurseries to genetics to cultivation to extraction to infusion to manufacturing to lab testing. And the vast majority of the flower that I found was synthetic or hybrid, and some of it was really phenomenal organic. But the very best flower that I've ever come across is hybrid cultivation in greenhouses with living organics, getting that sun and getting those supplements from the secondary lights, and then just really having a well-controlled environment. It's like the best of both worlds, and that's where I want to be.
Yep. I would agree. That is the future of high quality cannabis production, is mixed use greenhouse, some light depth, energy consumption aside. just being out in nature is really the way this plant was intended to be grown.
Yeah, there's something more to the terpene development, I feel, with sunlight that you can't really quite replicate with synthetic light, even though synthetic light has come phenomenally far and really does an amazing job. I mean, the modern day LEDs and HIDs are just incredible.
Yeah, I think you can get very close to the spectrum of the sun.
Yep, but just not
But
quite.
you have to have 3 or 4 different lighting systems.
Yes.
Over one plant.
Yeah,
To come close to what Mother Nature can provide you.
exactly.
And that's the problem is like, yeah, you can get there, but then you have to have HIDs, you have to have CMHs, you have to have LEDs, and then maybe, different spectrum LEDs just to make sure you're capturing everything.
Yeah.
That's hard for the average home grower to attain. Real quick, I talk a lot about what you put into this plant is what you get out of this.
Mhm.
So you touched a little bit upon that empathy, and I just remembered my actual point was the automation. And I go both ways on automation. I want people to automate their grow if it allows them more time in their grow. So like you get home from work and you have 3 hours to spend with your plants a night.
Mhm.
If watering your plants takes you 3 hours, then automate the watering so that you can get in your room and take care of your plants.
Exactly.
To
Well,
be
I mean,
with your
there's-
plants.
There's streamlining of processes, and then there's over automation.
Don't automate so it gets you out of the grow room.
Yeah.
Automate so that it keeps you with your plants and not doing all the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean the role of a cultivator is not to be the watering person. It's not to be, the management of nutrition. It's to observe. Ultimately, our job as high quality cultivators is to observe and to replicate nature and basically to try to just watch and see what's going on and pay attention to the nuances. The little things matter so much.
So on a previous episode, real quick before we move on, the replicating nature, I don't think a lot of growers really think about that aspect. When I started setting up a grow, I really just looked at what the plant did the best outside and tried to create that same type of environment inside. And I changed some things. Like one of the things that I did right off the bat was every week I took 15 minutes off my light cycle. Because when plants start to flower, they don't get 12 hours of light for the first 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It slowly decreases over time. So that plant over time is recognizing that it's a transition. I changed that a bit as my grow went on and started really lopping off time starting at 4 weeks so that the plant had full 12 hours. But then when you start chopping it off, you notice a difference in that plant and how it responds, especially in that last 8 weeks when you're chopping light off. And if you go to that 48 hours worth of darkness, that plant really responds to knowing that it's winter time, that its end of life is here. It's time to keep producing what it needs to produce. So replicate nature. That's where this plant grows the best. So do your best to replicate that. So to wrap up this part of the interview, again, if you're new to this format, we have a regular episode that is free and always will be to everybody that wants to listen. And then we have some bonus content that we publish only on our website. And that is free, of course, as long as you hand over your email address, just so that we can communicate with you down the road. So if you like what Ben or any of our other guests are about, head on over to thehomegrownhelpers.com/bonus or bonus content. Enter in your email address and you get access, and always will, to the bonus content, the next 5 questions that we are going to ask all of our guests here. So the last question here is, what's the last bit of advice you'd like to give to each grower that's listening to you right now?
Find what makes you passionate about cultivating, whatever aspect that is, because for everybody it's a little bit different, and use that as your starting point to learn more. Learn one aspect really well, and then it'll lead you to other parts. I started cultivating way back when, utilizing purely like the most synthetic things you could possibly get for nutrients and running it in cocoa. And I've transitioned very, very slowly through basically the vast majority of the available nutrients on the market. And I made my way all the way to living organics, because the one thing that made me most passionate about cultivation was terpene profile expression. And I found that as I grew with different bottles and different synthetic lines, my terpene expressions would change pretty dramatically. And so I was always trying to find the right expression and the way that I could really get that plant to properly, fully come to its own. And I never really got that until I got all the way over to living true soil. And all of a sudden it just clicked like a light bulb. But it was just that constant search for that passion of a proper terpene profile expression. And that was my driving force that got me all the way across, because it was also for me a highly medicinal factor, the terpenes. But that's really like, you got to find what it is about the cultivation process that you really love. Like one of my friends, it's data. He loves data. And he loves to grow too, but he really loves data. So for him, it's data collection. He every day is in there collecting data on each individual plant, every single aspect of the cultivation, and it's phenomenal. And it's really transitioned and brought his cultivation abilities really, really across the board. And that's a Hoda herb. And he's very, very impressive when it comes to that. But it's really, like I said, you got to find that one thing for you and see where it follows, and just follow it and see where it takes you.
Carrying over great life advice into the garden. I appreciate that.
The garden's
Find
about
your passion.
life.
Yeah, it truly is. You start saying it, I'm like, this is going to be one of those life lessons right here. Like, find your passion and just keep on keeping on.
Wow, it's funny. I never really actually thought about it. I was just thinking of it from like the point of view of the garden, but yeah, that does.
Absolutely.
But I mean, the garden is life. It's a full cycle. If you're cultivating living soil methodology and you've got a good ecosystem, you have every single aspect of the world in there. You have every piece of life. You have predators, you have prey, you have bystanders, you have just the world. And it's very humbling. I've learned a huge amount from growing, and more from the plant than I think I've learned from people, for sure.
I just had like an amazing aha moment, and we're going to do an episode about how grow advice translates into life advice.
Oh, I got that.
So like, yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. Like, I just like thinking back to all our previous episodes and like how, like, my biggest thing is this plant gives everything that you put into it. It returns everything that you put into it and gives it back to you. That's kind of life, you know, like you put passion out there and passion will be returned, and love, you put love out there and love will be returned. Sorry, got a little philosophical there. So while we wrap this up, how can our audience learn more from you, connect with you, and maybe enlist your services if they're so inclined?
So currently we run, like I said, Acadia Farms, which is our CBD company. I do consultation work, and they can feel free to reach out to me either through our website, acadiafarmsfamily.com, or at our email, acadiafarmsfamily@gmail.com, or they can call me directly at our business line, which is 774-565-4077.
All right. That was a great interview, Ben. Thanks so much. I'm sure our audience appreciated it.
Oh, it was a real pleasure, man.
And if you did like what you hear, guys, make sure you head over, download the bonus content at thehomegrownhelpers.com/bonus. And you can gain access to the rest of this interview. We get a little more personal, some more grow tips, and then, more philosophical advice about what life and gardening is all about.
Lessons from the garden.
Life lessons from the garden. So head on over, download that, and happy growing. We'll catch you next time.